Hi everyone, welcome to the BC AdventureSmart kickoff to winter, our winter safety series. We're really stoked to get this winter going. We've been planning and getting excited for it for months actually. So we've been ready for a while and we're so glad for you to join us for our first one. We actually have 4 of them over the next 2 weeks, Tuesday, Thursday, and Tuesday, Thursday. So if you miss out something tonight, jump on another one and join some other special guests. Speaking of special guests, we have an awesome lineup tonight. One is a really good friend, 2 are new friends, and they will fill your ears with all sorts of snow safety, snow passion, and just stoke for the season. And that's what these events are for. We want to help you get informed before you go outdoors. I'm Sandra, by the way, and I'm the Executive Director of the BC AdventureSmart program. I'm grateful to be joining you tonight from the traditional territory of the Syilx people, also known as the Okanagan. I'm here in Vernon. I was just in Revelstoke to get our winter crew set up so that they're going to be talking to sledders at Frisbee and Boulder, working with RMR for backcountry tours, and I made it this far and the highway's closed. So I'm enjoying Vernon while I can until I can get home back to North Bend. Just a little bit about what we've got here tonight. We've got our guests, of course, for you. We're on a system called GoToWebinar. You're muted and we can't see you, unfortunately. You do have an opportunity, though, to toss some questions into the chat, and you'll have a chance to talk to our presenters, our guests tonight, after each one of their sessions. Natasha is our tech support. She's also our assistant coordinator. She's here to run the show and drive the ship from behind the scenes. You may hear her voice pop in and out here and there. But as a team tonight of 5 of us, we're here for you. We're here for you to get ready for winter and to see how we can make it the best and the safest possible. As we do that, this really helps out our search and rescue volunteers in the province of BC. 17 years ago, the AdventureSmart program started based on the fact that we have more search and rescue calls here in British Columbia than everywhere else in the country. That's not great to have that under our belt, but it's what we have. And so the BC Search and Rescue Association started the AdventureSmart program 17 years ago. And we do all of the outdoor education for the province. And then based on our success in the first 5 years, it went national. So AdventureSmart is a national program. In BC, we have 79 search and rescue groups consisting of 3,000 volunteers, 2,500 members full-time, 500 members in training or MITs. And every year they respond to over 1,900 search and rescue calls every year. That's a lot. It keeps them busy. So our job here is to help reduce the number and severity of those calls through outdoor education, webinars, community outreach, trailheads, snow safety at sledding parking lots, however we can, with whoever we can, with partners and industry. Without further ado, why don't I jump into our first guest? I'm going to give a little intro and then Cody can turn his camera on in a second. Snowmobiling has taken Cody Mcnulty, who's our first guest, all over BC, Russia, and Scandinavia, actually. And no matter if he's in the air, upside down, right side up, flipping around, or sideways, he's seriously thought about every single one of those moves before he did it. Cody is a backcountry snowmobiler originally from a rural farm outside Fort Fraser here in BC. He spent the last 12 years living on the West Coast, riding the Coast Mountains, and he works full-time at Seaspan Marine. An accomplished extreme snowmobiler, Cody's mindset is about safety on the snow. And the priority before any of those moves is calculated and strategic so that he can land them safely and reach his destination, which is always home. His drive and passion for the outdoors we'll show you tonight. It'll come out with his stories and what he has to share, and he's here to talk to you about one of his favorite things, which is snowmobiling. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Cody Mcnulty to our virtual table.
Okay,
there you go.
I'm here.
It's all yours, Cody.
Sound is working?
You're good to go.
So,
yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks so much. So, Sandra, thank you for the introduction. Sandra and Natasha working behind the scenes at BC AdventureSmart. If we could give a round of applause with the attendees, I know you're in silent mode, we would. This is stuff that as a snowmobiler and as a representative of our community and as an ambassador for snowmobiling and passion, these are the pieces of work that we get to do. All of the folks participating in these seminars, this is the pieces of work we get to do that it means something. Perhaps someone's going to learn something here through really just talking and sharing that may be passed down from me to you, or you to you, and you to you, and you to somebody else that makes a decision, a different decision, a safe decision that ultimately could prevent an incident or an injury or God forbid a fatality from happening. And that's what it's all about. For a lot of you folks who know me as a snowmobiler, you don't have an opportunity through social media or even meeting me maybe on the mountain to get to know more about me or what makes me tick. And that's kind of my plan today. I've decided to not go with a PowerPoint presentation. I've got a little bit of notes written down right here beside me, hanging on some tape actually. And I just want to share a little bit about me. So outside of snowmobiling, I am equally passionate about the marine transportation business. Even though I grew up in rural British Columbia, my father's company got involved with construction and retrofitting of small tug and barges in the early 2000s, actually the late 90s. And that's something I'm heavily involved with today. So really, when you look at it, where I live in Squamish, British Columbia, my life revolves around oceans, mountains, and forecasting. Weather forecasting, whether it's at 0 meters or 2,500 meters elevation. When you look at what BC Adventure Series is doing, it's really about making safe decisions and trying to raise the bar on awareness. So British Columbia is the adventure destination province of Canada. I think all British Columbians can say that quite passionately and quite honestly, but it is no joke. We do have the highest rated amount of search and rescue activations. So that's serious. To put that in perspective, over the course of riding 76 days last year on our local mountains, I participated in 5 major SAR incidents involving helicopter removal of an injured victim of snowmobiling incident. Thankfully, last year, all 5 of those incidents I was involved with led to a safe recovery, but still scary times. And we'll get into that. I kind of want to talk to you about what adventuring means to me. Helen Keller, I don't know if any of you are familiar with her, and a little fun fact about Cody Mcnulty is I'm kind of a geek. I like to spend a lot of time looking at quotes. I'll spend hours on my computer or phone by the fireplace just scrolling the internet looking for quotes. And Helen Keller is a very famous woman that most of us have learned about in school here. She was born in the late 1800s, and she was blind and deaf and devoted her life to foregoing the same opportunities as anyone else and pushing really hard through education in that aspect of life. And one of her favorite quotes for me reads, "Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. The fearful are caught as often as the bold." And for me, that really hits home as an adventure, and not just in snowmobiling, as an adventure in the world and going traveling, in getting up in the morning, getting dressed, pulling up my socks, lacing up my shoes, and wanting to go outside and see what this beautiful province, this beautiful country, and this beautiful world has to offer. There's risks involved in all of our decisions. And we're going to focus that talk today. We're going to focus that risk on snowmobiling. Now, mountain snowmobiling, primarily for those of you visiting the province of British Columbia, that is our focal point. We offer dozens and dozens of sanctioned snowmobile zones around the province, ranging from, quite honestly, ranging from the best to the best to the best of snowmobiling terrain and scenic views and the quality of snow on planet Earth, in my humble opinion. But we can't protect ourselves from the unknown. And this is something that I'm gonna sidebar into a personal story because there's another facet of my life. I've actually spent almost 15 years public speaking and traveling around this country and having the honor to travel coast to coast across Canada, delivering a personal message around safety and around owning accountability of personal safety. I was involved in a fatality when I was a teenager in the marine industry. It started as a 1-person incident, and it led to a 5-person rescue scenario that had a lot of high stake decisions in a short amount of time. And because of those decisions made, what could have been a 5-person fatality was mitigated to a 1-person fatality. And although that's tragic, That set the bar for me when I was 18 to realize that when you go into a scenario and you're unaware of what you don't know, are you really making smart decisions or are you getting lucky? And I really, really want that to resonate through to every snowmobiler listening to this piece, because I'll admit to you right now, the accolades and the luxuries and the pleasure and the passion I carry on snowmobiling hasn't always been because of smart decisions. Unfortunately, I'm still here because a few bad decisions I made, I was lucky. And if you're all to look yourself in the mirror, I believe you'd be able to realize that you've had some decisions out there that you were lucky too. And thank goodness you were, because that means you're still here. That means you're one of these attendees listening to the seminar, and that means you had the opportunity from that luck to gain knowledge and make better decisions. So what can we do, right? It's 2021. What can we do? Well, I wrote down right here, education versus experience. Snowmobiling is an amazing sport. Motorized sports in general are so fun. The technology and power delivery of a modern snowmobile can create lures of passion that, just simply put, nothing else I've experienced on earth can. I can truly speak to that effect, that riding snowmobiles, and I share that passion with so many of you that I meet along this journey, you feel the same. These snowmobiles are incredible, and viewing the BC backcountry in a winter landscape absolutely sets our souls free. There's so much we can do to educate ourselves. Avalanche education has stepped so forward with snowmobile specific and not just backcountry user groups outside of motorized sports. There's some fantastic people. In fact, locally here in Squamish, right now this evening, one of the Avalanche seminars put on through Ski-Doo is happening right here at our local dealership in Squamish, No Limits Motorsports. And those Avalanche seminars are happening all over the province. And I urge you to look that up through Ski-Doo's website, and I believe our speaker a little later on will touch on that further. But I want to talk to you about preseason. So you've seen lots of videos. People are out there in what I call A-arm season and building the stoke, and we've got online use, and everyone's having FOMO and wanting to get out there. And I'll tell you what I do. Every year in October and November, I try to scare the absolute crap out of myself. I will buckle down on my computer and I will spend hours and hours and hours looking at Avalanche videos. There is some terrifying recordings of avalanches out there for free on YouTube to absolutely put yourself in a GoPro perspective, hearing the voices panic, throttle decision series videos, all of these tools out there on media to remind me how serious an avalanche can be. I want to talk a little bit about courses. We hear a lot about take an avalanche course, and that's a piece of education. And what did I just say earlier? I talked about education versus experience. Well, there's no point having one without the other, and both are just as equally important. I really, really urge everyone to take an AST level 1, and I urge everyone to retake that level 1. It's no different in rescue scenarios, whether it be confined space, which is something that I still practice in the marine industry, or whether it be using a beacon and probe in a burial scenario. The more we practice, the more we get proficient with our skills. And let's face it, we don't want to have to be there, right? And I'll get into the lowest common denominator theory that I believe has led me to safe decisions and safely returning home a little bit later. And then it's the experience piece. You have a course. As our sport grows, we want to really push more and more. There's some fantastic avalanche educators out there. I'm not going to single any out because I don't have a favorite or particular person I use. I believe there's some really, really amazing people right here in British Columbia offering avalanche education for snowmobile specific learners. And the information and the actual practice on snow and practice doing scenarios and drilling in and making the skill set sharper and sharper, there's no price tag on that. It's absolutely something I encourage everyone to do and repeat doing year to year to year. But how do you gain that experience? I read that quote earlier around the fearful are caught as often as the brave. So now my preseason, I'm terrified. I've looked at all these avalanche videos. I'm looked back through all my journals. I keep a recording of journals. I understand how many people and friends that I don't have anymore who have lost their lives in situations in the backcountry where something unsafe happened and it took their lives. This isn't a joke, right? This is really serious. People I know aren't here anymore, and they lost their life in the backcountry. And I know you're probably watching this and you're going, Cody Mcnulty, this very positive person. Well, this is how my mind works. This is how my mind works. I experienced a fatality in a poor planned situation gone wrong that changed my outlook on life. That is a real scenario. That is a real piece of accountability that everyone adventuring into the backcountry really has to put yourself in that position. And you have to decide, what do I know? What do I don't know? How do I want to take my education, and how do I want to gain that with experience? So I'm going to talk a little bit. I've wrote down just a few tips here that I use as a routine. No matter if I'm going to my favorite zone, and you know what, it's a really safe day, the conditions haven't changed at all for almost a week. Should I skip a step? Absolutely not. Here's a few things I do outside of technical education that I want to share with you freely and encourage you to do the same thing. What do we have on our side in today's world more than ever before? It is technology. Avalanche Canada, who's joining us here this evening to give some really good information, has one of my favorite apps on my iPhone that I can use every day. I can get into that app, I can look up synopsis and weather reports and hazards and conditions right here in my local area. I can use other weather apps to monitor freezing temperatures. I can use weather station apps that I actually use in the marine world, and I can track the way the winds change direction, whether it's coming in as a northwest or if it's turned to a southeast. We can use social media to look at, hey, I was working yesterday, but one of my friends, Andrew, was out riding, and I can look at his videos to kind of get an idea of what the snow looks like. I can work with our local community. So if we're going to go to a snowmobile club, even if I'm not a member, I'm going to have an opportunity to look and talk to people in the parking lot, at the booth, try to gain from talking people to people. What are the conditions out there like today? What were they like yesterday? The next thing I've wrote down after that is a really, really important piece that's applicable to any activity that revolves around making safe decisions, and that's validating. So if any of you have ever rode with me for the first time or we're in a big group, you'll notice I do weird things. Things I learned from very, very intelligent people like Carl Kuster, very intelligent people like Rob Alford, who use education and their experience to gain more education and more experience. And the word is validation. For example, if I'm looking at my weather app and it shows at 2 in the morning the freezing temperature jumped up to 1,500 meters. Well, when I'm riding my Ski-Doo up the trail, I'll have my altitude reading on. And when I get around 14 or 1,500 meters, you'll notice I'll be looking at the snow on the trees, I'll be shaking leaves, I'll be dragging my feet, I'll be trying to look for evidence that is the technology, is the weather apps that I've looked at to gain information, can I validate that that information is in fact accurate for the place I'm riding? And I'll compare that. I'll compare that later in the day when I climb up a valley and we change direction from north to south and south to east and back and onward. Well, now I can look into that snow condition and I can again compare and validate to the community of people I've talked to the technology apps I've looked at. And it's a continual process all day, every day of using tools to gain information, people to get local knowledge, which equals more information. And I can validate and compare that all the way from the trailhead to the mountain and through ranges all day long. Something I've wrote down here that if you folks have listened to some of the stuff I talk about with my Homework by Snowpulse posts, it's a theory I came up with. I actually stole it from my father, called the lowest common denominator. And this has little to do with education, and this has little to do with experience. But what it has to do is with your gut feeling, and sometimes that spidey sense in the back of your neck that raises your hairs. So lowest common denominator theory is if you're riding, which you should never be out there by yourself, if you're riding with one person, two persons, or even a large group of people, and we're about to traverse across a slope that I know is safe because I've validated and compared to all of my education and information and experience, And I am confident and certain to cross that terrain. And I'm confident and certain to bring my fellow group of peers with me. And everyone in that group feels the same way except for one person. One person says, you know what, Cody, I don't have a piece of education or a piece of experience fact to really argue with this slope isn't safe. Something doesn't feel right. When I hear that sort of thing, someone's gut feeling, whether maybe in fact it's just uneasiness or nervousness or lack of experience, I always operate to that lowest common denominator. To me, there's always another way around. The mountain is very, very vast. There's always another access route or another route or another piece of terrain to travel where I can always keep my commitment to that lowest common denominator. That's something that you're not going to find in an avalanche course, and you're certainly not going to find it in snow science, but it's a very, 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 very valid piece that has kept me helping me make safe decisions all the way from adventuring in the backcountry on foot, hunting with my dad on horses as a kid, or snowmobiling in groups with my friends in 2021 and into the 2022 season. A big misconception out there, personal protective equipment. And if you've heard me talk about this within the marine industry, within my public speaking, or even as a snowmobiler, our personal protective equipment, our beacons, our probes, our shovels, our airbags, is a very, 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 very critical piece of equipment, but they are a last line of defense. If you have found yourself in a position to be using these in any way, you have put yourself in harm's way, right? And that's where I really want to encourage the people to get that education, that experience, to help take you out of the lucky category into the smart category and make sure that your personal protective equipment doesn't become your last line of defense. I'm 1 minute and 20 seconds over my time, and I'm on my last bullet point. It's around planning. Something that we use in the marine industry that our tugboat captains use that is incomparable to anything else in my experience is not just plan A, but it's coming up with a plan B. This is relatable to when we're doing stunts in the backcountry. This is relatable to when I'm riding with my peers. We always want to have a plan A and a plan B, so that if something does go wrong, we're not caught unsure how to react. We have a plan B, whether that's another route, whether that's a backup map on a GPS, whether that's making sure we're riding with someone who has a spare battery on their phone or spare battery on their cellular or digital communication device, or an extra radio, or simply more provisions. Planning with a plan A and a plan B can be the difference between coming home at the end of the day, or even if you're in an unintentional situation of spending the night in the backcountry, that plan B can help you have the provisions to come out in the morning or from being retrieved from SAR healthy and safe and able to learn and see another day in the backcountry. I'm going to close out there. I know it's not your usual presentation style you'd expect to see from me of all fun and passion, but this is serious out there. I love this sport. I know that everyone tuning in today loves this sport, and I don't want to see these fatality numbers year to year climb. In the marine industry and confined space, I see these numbers still year to year. It breaks my heart. 20 years later from an incident I was involved in, it breaks my heart. And although I haven't had experience personally with fatalities in the backcountry, I see those, and that means someone in a family suffering from a loss, and I know what that's like. So let's do our part. Let's be very kind. There's a lot of new snowmobilers out there. I hope you learned something, and I hope through talking, even in the COVID age of digital seminars, something I've said can be passed to someone you know or someone they know and help them make a smart decision that takes them out of the lucky category to the smart category, and we get to do this again tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening. Sandra, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Cody. Yeah, so we've got a question here from the audience. And how do you pick sledder friends to go out with? You kind of talked about that in your presentation a little bit, but that'd be awesome if we could elaborate just how you pick your crew.
It's really, really hard, and it has nothing to do with being a profile snowmobiler or someone who knows, who's well known in snowmobiling. Picking your friends for mountaineering, regardless if it's on a snowmobile or in any capacity, And I try to explain this to people is when you're going out in a situation where something that it could occur that you would need to put your life in someone else's hand, who would you go with? If you had to handpick people and told you're going to be in a scenario where your life will be put into the hands of someone else, who would you go with? So that, and again, I know that could kind of come across as sled snobby, but I really try to encourage myself and others to make sure that if you're riding with just one other person, can that person save your life if you need them to? And if you're riding with a large group, can someone in that group save your life if you need them to? And that's kind of how I go with picking my friends when I'm riding, because I ride with snowmobiling is really interesting, right? Sometimes my phone, I won't talk to people from May 1st to Christmas. I just won't hear from them at all. And winter starts, and I'm going to text and communicate and ride with them for the next 5 months on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And maybe in some regard, those are acquaintances more than friends you're having over for dinner and getting to know your family. But those people, in my case, are people that I believe in that could save my life if they have to. So that's something I really encourage everyone out there when you're, it's not like agreeing to go for a walk or a run on the seawall in groups. It's something that, and I really encourage social groups and community gatherings and sharing and people being to ride with other people at the same skill set and same passion level. But try to put yourself out there with that education and experience factor on par with someone that could save your life.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. Just to introduce myself, I forgot to say I'm Natasha. I'm the person behind the scenes here that everybody can hear. Just moderating this evening. Thank you everybody for joining us. We've got another question, and this is a great one from Wendy. Wendy's new to snowmobiling. Are designated areas and trails such as Mica Mountain risky, or is it more if you're off the beaten track?
Wendy, good question. Riding, and here's the interesting thing about snowmobiling, and this is where I really promote for all new snowmobilers out there, because in the last couple of years we've had just tremendous growth with snowmobiling, and that's good for everybody. That's good for the OEMs to push technology to continue to want to forecast and build snow machines into the future. It's good for tourism, it's good for business lines across British Columbia, and it's good for people to get outside and get to experience motorized snowmobiling. It's a fantastic sport. And Wendy, one of the biggest things that I could say to you is two things. One, please find your way into an avalanche course before you get out there this year. You won't regret it for a second, because snowmobiling is quite interesting. The same piece of land, so if we took a 20-hectare piece of land on Mica Mountain and we looked at just that 20-hectare piece, regardless of slope, regardless of terrain, regardless of any of the geography of that parcel of land, if we mapped it all winter, at some point in the winter, that piece or parcel of land would go through all stages from low to extreme risk in avalanche conditions. And that's through conditions changing. And that's probably something that everyone listening in a new or even intermediate category of snowmobiling, even riding a trail on an extreme day could be very dangerous if you go off the trail and there's an embankment that's simply tall as you are. If the snowpack is large, just a very shallow side of a trail could cut and put enough snow weight on top of you to suffocate and asphyxiate and put yourself in a position of being a victim. So I hope that answers your question, Wendy.
Awesome. Yeah, that's definitely a great question. And then we've got just one more question, and then we will say thanks to Cody, and we'll head over to our next presenter. Do you think, this is the next question, do you think easy access to terrain plays a role in sledder overconfidence?
Do I think easy access to terrain presents? Did you read the last part of that question?
Yeah, no problem. Do you think easy access to terrain plays a role in sledder overconfidence?
Yes.
So
Yes, I
rider
do.
overconfidence.
Yeah, maybe overconfidence would be the wrong word. I would probably say um, awareness, accidental unawareness of
For sure.
a lot of grooming zones are grooming into high alpine areas, which is fantastic. You know, you can, as a beginner, you can get out there on a sunny, safe day, and you can get yourself on the trail to viewpoints that are just absolutely breathtaking, and it's fantastic that there's some of these zones around. The second part of that is getting off the trail. These modern snowmobiles are so capable. They are the technology, even in my era of 20 plus years, is just mind blowing. I mean, my Ski-Doos have 3-inch tracks. They have stock turbos. They, even in 3 or 4 feet of powder, you just can find yourself riding into terrain that absolutely can get you into trouble. And that's again making sure you understand, is your education and is your experience level as capable as a snowmobile you're on. And that's where getting out and taking those, you know, right from the basic seminars at our local dealerships into your higher level Avalanche courses 1 and 2 and into your ops, you're going to be able to go through that learning curve and make sure your capabilities are matched by your snowmobile. And hopefully, if I'll leave this last little part, is as me as a rider, way outside of the fancy riding, I track and journal, and I'm only doing jumps or tricks or stunts on a 10 to 13% basis of a winter. The rest of that time is just spent train traveling and riding and experiencing the backcountry and exploring as absolutely much as possible. And I've always believed, and I'm going to keep it this way, that my rider capabilities, my physical riding capabilities, will never reach their full potential, because I won't let them. I'll keep it in check and make sure that I'm riding in a condition or capability that is on par with the technology of where my snowmobile can take me and where the elements can keep me safe.
Excellent. Thank you so much again, Cody, for your time and joining us this evening. It's been awesome to have you here. And yeah, thank you so much.
Very welcome. This is really good stuff, and I'm excited to see how the rest of these go. This is work we can be proud of. Everyone watching, everyone presenting.
Thanks, Cody. That was really great. I was glued and made some notes here actually, and look forward to hearing the rest of our guests as well. Before we move on to the next guest, Cody talked about percentages there for a bit, and how that played a role in his efforts on the snow, in what he does, for what we see him doing those exceptional tricks. And he said that's 10 to 13% of his time out there. I just wanted to share with you that we have a lot of data within the search and rescue community. So those 3,000 volunteers enter data into a data management system that tracks every single incident summary. And what that does is it allows search and rescue and us here to use that data and mine it for our education. So we know that it was our role to play here and have this virtual table to invite sledders to the community together, for you, for us, to bring us all together, because we know that 30% of the BC search and rescue call volume in winter is for snowmobilers. We also can pin that to a region, and we know that that's in the East Kootenays. And that's the reason why we've placed our team there this winter, to a team of 2 that will be at Frisbee, they'll be at Boulder, RMR, and doing work within those top user groups that seem to need search and rescue. So it's all strategic in what we do, and it's great to learn from you, Cody. Thanks again. And just some regional information before we jump into our next guest. And our next guest, actually, the office is based in the East Kootenays and based in Revelstoke. I was just there last week, was able to pop in and see everyone and meet Tyson, who is our next guest, Tyson Reddy. We're proud to have Tyson with us and feature Avalanche Canada as one of our special guests tonight. We've been working with them. I've been working with them directly for the last 17 years. They started exactly the same time we did, along the same means. And it's really been a great seasonal partnership to have with AvCan throughout these years, as they do education and we do outdoor education, and really all for incident prevention providing you with as much information as we can. Tyson is a new member with Avalanche Canada as part of their forecaster team, and prior to joining the AvCAD team, he worked as a guide at Great Canadian Heli Skiing and Toby Creek Adventures. Tyson splits his time between Invermere and Revi. It's not a bad divide there, combo. Hiking and skiing and climbing in the Purcells fill Tyson's time off. What's involved in being an avalanche forecaster? I know that some of you here tonight probably have the same question. I have some idea, but I can't wait for Tyson to share. And on that note, I'd like to welcome Tyson to our BC AdventureSmart table. Thanks, Tyson.
Tyson should join us shortly here. Tyson just uses a bit. There he is. I can see his microphone. There we go.
Hey, Sandra, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the introduction. Just give me a second here. We'll get the screen share going. You guys have my screen now?
Not quite.
Okay, stand by.
No problem.
How about now?
Yes, we do.
Okay, excellent.
We can see the, if you want to just put it into full screen and then.
Yeah.
Awesome possum. There we go. We're good to go. Thanks, Tyson.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for the introduction, Sandra, and thanks to everybody who is joining in tonight and giving me an opportunity to share a bit of info on the resources we have available at Avalanche Canada. And thanks, Cody, for the presentation there. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap between yours and mine. You had a lot of really great things to say about sledding in the backcountry and risk management. So avalanche.ca is your one-stop shop for avalanche safety resources. And just like Cody mentioned, all these resources are available on an app on your phone, so you can get this stuff on the go. Our products are designed for a really diverse user base. So not just sledders and skiers, we also design our products to be used by snowshoers, cross-country skiers, ice climbers, mountaineers. Essentially anybody who's going into the backcountry in the winter should feel comfortable using our resources. So we provide a whole wide variety of resources on our website. The main one is the Avalanche Forecast. And when you visit our website, the first thing you're going to be presented with is a map. So this is where the whole process starts. You're going to want to find your region on the map. If you're in the Revi area, that's going to mean the North Columbia or the South Columbia. The Trans-Canada Highway divides those two regions. Or if you're going skiing at Rogers Pass, there'll be another region you're going to want to take a look at. So once you found your region, first thing you're going to take a look at is the danger rating. And so we break the terrain up into 3 elevation bands: alpine, tree line, below tree line, and we assign a hazard rating to each of those regions. And then we get a little bit more detailed than that. There's a tab after the danger reading that will break down the avalanche problems and give you, additional details on what aspect of the mountain the problem exists on, whether it's just, simply isolated to, say, the north aspect, or if it encompasses the entire mountain. We'll also give additional details as to what elevation band that problem exists at and what the likelihood of triggering an avalanche is and the size of avalanche you could expect if triggering it. There'll be a little comment section below that where we'll add additional supporting details relating to how the weather could impact that problem, or terrain travel advice, how to manage that problem within your group. The last tab is some more supporting details. So we'll provide you with additional weather for that region that you've selected, as well as an avalanche summary. will inform the public on recent avalanches that have taken place in the region, type of avalanche, all that sort of stuff. And then we also put a confidence rating at the bottom. So producing an avalanche forecast is a really complicated process that involves looking at data from remote weather stations, forecast data from a variety of different sources, and then data coming in from professionals and recreationalists in the field, and putting it all together. And there's sort of different weighting that we can apply to different data, and not all data is as strong as others. And so we'll assign a confidence to our forecast at the bottom. So, you know, for example, with the big storm that we have hitting our area tonight, we have high confidence that that's going to increase the avalanche hazard, and there will be large avalanches. But there'll be times in the year where we may have less confidence in our forecast, and we'll find a way to present that information to the public. This is a really great feature, one of my favorites on our website here. This is the mountain weather forecast. And so this is a product created by meteorologists in the province, and they're looking specifically at the elevations where recreationalists are going to go. So this is not the forecast for, you know, Main Street down in Revie. This is a forecast that's relevant to, you know, 2,000 meters, 3,000 meters. They really focus on upper elevation winds. A really great product. It's a very broad view of the weather over the mountainous areas of Western Canada. But what it does is it gives you an indication of sort of the general pattern where storms are tracking and stuff like that. And it provides additional context for the more specific forecasts that you're likely going to look at, whether it's a product from Environment Canada or Spot WX or something like that. This will kind of give you a sort of a broader context of what. On the Learn tab on our website, you're going to have a whole bunch of educational resources. One of them is a glossary of definitions. So if there's terms within our avalanche forecast that you're unfamiliar with, you can go to the glossary, look it up, or within that mountain weather forecast I just showed you. So that's a really great resource that'll help you navigate the rest of the resources that are available on the website. And a new resource that we've thrown out there just recently, I think this went live last year or the year before, is Avy Savvy. And this is a online course. It's free, anyone can take it. And it's meant to be an introduction to avalanche safety, and something that you should do before taking your first in-person course. And so once you've done Avy Savvy, the next thing, of course, is to, you know, get your head and hands in the snow, so to speak. And take a course. The AST level 1 is generally your starting course. I like to think that the AST 1 and 2 are not really levels 1 and 2, they're parts 1 and 2. The idea should be doing the AST 1, spending, you know, 20, 30, 40 days in the field, coming back and doing part 2, the AST 2. And in between those courses, we've got a couple of real good ones. We've got a companion rescue course that's a 1-day course. Cody kind of touched on some of this stuff, the importance on revisiting these skills, and that's what that course is all about. And then another one, managing avalanche terrain. And Cody kind of touched on a few of these things when answering some of those questions that came up, just talking about how you move through terrain, and especially with modern snowmobiles, how easy it is to get into big, dangerous, scary terrain. This can be a really great one to hone your skills on how to manage avalanche. And then the next thing we need to look at here is safety gear. And Cody also touched on a number of these things as well. So the essential pieces of gear are your transceiver, your shovel, and your probe. Now, not all the probe shovels and transceivers on the market are created equal. There's a variety, and they've changed quite a bit over the years. With the transceiver, one of the things you're looking for is that it's got 3 antennas. Any transceiver that you're going to go and buy off the shelf today will have 3 antennas, but you can still find plenty out there in the used market that are 10+ years old and have 2 or even 1 antenna, and those should definitely be avoided. They're fairly outdated. Shovel's pretty simple tool, but an incredibly important tool. digging is the most time-consuming component of any avalanche rescue, so it's super important that you've got a good shovel. I don't know if you can still find a plastic one on the market, but there was a point in time when people sold plastic shovels for avalanche rescue, and you should definitely not have one of those, and you should make sure that nobody in your group is using a plastic shovel. They're very easy to break, especially, you know, when you're trying to dig someone out. It's an aggressive process. People are going hard. They're using every bit of strength and energy they've got. They'll break that plastic shovel. Probe, super important tool. You can get probes that are just over 2 meters, and I would highly recommend you avoid those. Even in shallower snowpack areas, you'll hear sometimes people say, oh, you know, the Rockies, for example, shallow snowpack areas, you know, you don't need a 3-meter probe. You can very easily, even in a shallow snowpack zone, end up with 3 meters of avalanche debris. So super important tool, definitely get yourself a 3-meter probe. And in the context of sledding, it's really important to think about where you're going to keep this gear. You know, I don't know if you guys are using tunnel bags or strapping any gear to your sleds. These pieces of equipment, they go on your body. So you've got that probe and shovel on your back that you're wearing at all times, and you're wearing that transceiver close to center of mass over your chest. Next, we should look at a few pieces of equipment that are becoming incredibly popular and are definitely trending towards, you know, being considered essential pieces of equipment. The first one there is an airbag, super popular piece of equipment, and there's a lot of evidence that they do save lives. How avalanches settle is through a process called invert segregation, and essentially what it is, if you were to take a bag of Tostitos chips, shake it up, all the larger chips are going to end up on the top of the bag, and all the smaller chips will filter down to the bottom of the bag, and that's how avalanches settle. The largest pieces will be at the top, the smaller pieces will be at the bottom. So what the airbag does is when that thing inflates, it really just increases your size, essentially making you one of the larger pieces of debris that's going to settle. It should in theory keep you on the surface, and it has worked many times. They've saved plenty of lives. So like I said, one of those pieces of equipment that I think is, you know, very soon going to be considered essential. And if you've ever watched some of those videos that Cody's talking about, where, you know, sledders have been involved in avalanches, often their machine is going to end up on the surface, and that's due to that process. The next piece of equipment is an Inreach or a spot device, and so this is an emergency communication device that doesn't require any cell service. It uses satellites. Some of them have some texting features. Some of them can even get you weather reports out in the mountains, which is really cool. And they all have an SOS function. You push that function, it goes right to search and rescue, gives them your location, and they can start to dispatch and rescue. So a really great piece of equipment. And then the next one is a radio. Backcountry Access makes a really great radio for communicating with your friends in the backcountry. It's becoming a really popular piece of equipment. The only limitation with those radios is you can't communicate sort of outside your user group. You're really just communicating with other people that have that same radio. So a really great tool for communicating with people within your group. But a VHF radio is another thing to look at that gives you the ability to, you know, for example, call kilometers on a logging road that you're using to access an area for sledding. In certain scenarios, you could potentially communicate with search and rescue using that radio. So another tool to consider. And with those two pieces of technology and other technology as well, like your phone, you want to keep those things at least 20 centimeters away from your transceiver. While you're out in the mountains, they can, well, any electronics can cause interference, but electronics that are emitting or receiving a signal can cause a greater amount of interference. Another great resource we have on our website is the trip planner. So most of the really popular backcountry recreation zones in British Columbia have what's called an ATES rating, an avalanche terrain exposure scale rating. And it's a 3-step rating, simple being terrain that has, you know, essentially no avalanche terrain, challenging terrain that does have avalanche terrain, but is generally limited to, you know, 1 or maybe 2 avalanche paths, something that is presents additional challenges to simple terrain. And then complex terrain is terrain that should really be reserved for the more experienced user. This is where you have multiple overlapping avalanche paths. You've got large cornice hazard glaciers, things like that. Decision making gets very involved in challenging terrain. So what this tool does is it basically combines the forecast that we've created with the terrain that you'd like to go and can recommend whether or not it's a good place to go under the day's conditions. So depending on the avalanche hazard rating for that area and the rating it's gotten under the 8 scale, you'll either be given a use caution response and extra caution response, which is the yellow, and then red, which is not recommended. And through the AST courses, you'll get more exposure to how the 8 system works and really how to apply this in the field. It's also worth noting that, you know, if you open up this trip planner on your phone while you're driving out, you'll be able to get the latest forecasts, and this will all work on your phone as well, assuming that you had cell service when you tried to load it up initially, and it'll save that data as you go into the field so you can revisit data while you're in the field outside of cell service. So another great tool that's becoming really popular that also really helps us as forecasters is the Mountain Information Network. So when you're out sledding or skiing or whatever it is you're doing, and you, let's say you witness an avalanche or you've made some really great snowpack observations, at the end of the day, once you get back into cell service, you can submit a report that other users will be able to see, as well as us as forecasters, to assist in decision making for the next day. And so you can also look at this in the morning and get a feel for what other riders were doing the previous day and what sort of things they noticed in the snow or noticed in the weather, avalanche activity, things like that. And just like Cody mentioned in his presentation, technology is incredibly valuable. Like, just, you know, this is a huge component in decision making. And then in addition to those Mountain Information Network reports, on the map, you're also going to find a few other symbols. A red dot will equal a avalanche incident, and there's also some black antenna symbols that you'll find on the map. And those are remote weather stations. So that's data, live data that's coming to you from weather stations owned by Avalanche Canada, Parks Canada, highways, things like that. And they can give you up-to-date information on what's going on in your riding areas. So for example, if you're going riding somewhere north of Rettie, there's a really great one called Caribou Ridge. Give you an idea what you've gotten for nude snow temperatures, things like that. If you're going skiing up in Rogers Pass, they've got almost a dozen weather stations up there, I think. So a real abundance of information up there. And these things are throughout the province. So, you know, if there's a great place to ride, there probably is a weather station nearby that's going to give you some valuable information. So in summary, you got to get the gear, get the training, get the forecast. And just like Cody mentioned in his presentation as well, the goal here is to always Natasha, I think we can open it up to questions now.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that awesome presentation, Tyson. Super great insight into AvCan, what they do. Definitely inspired me to refresh my AST one because I probably need to do that. So yeah, this is a really, really great question here. Is there a difference between an avalanche transceiver and a personal locator beacon?
You definitely will hear people referring to transceivers as beacons. So beacon, transceiver, same thing. Unless that person, you know, in using the term personal locator beacon, they could also be referring to that other device I talked about, a spot or an Inreach, and those definitely are different. The spot or the Inreach device they're not specific enough with their location information that they can be used to find someone under the snow in a short enough time frame. It just gives search and rescue a general idea of where you are within the terrain. And also the location information just goes to search and rescue, or you can also send your information to other contacts that you've pre-programmed into the device. So it's not something that can be used within a short enough time frame to get someone out of the snow. They're still an important part of the rescue, because often when people are dug out, they can be injured, they can have a variety of different health problems, after being deprived of oxygen, things like that. So you're going to need help getting them out of the snow. So using one of those devices is super important, but it's not a replacement for a transceiver, and a transceiver is not a replacement for one of those.
Awesome. Thank you so much for clearing that up, because we hear those words tossed around all the time, beacon, transceiver. So that's a great explanation, kind of right from the trusted source. We have a good question here from Anna, and she's saying, does Avalanche Canada offer or recommend any publications?
Well, we have a handbook that is part of the AST curriculum. So you'd receive that whenever you do an AST level 1 or 2, and we would certainly recommend that. In addition to that, I mean, off the top of my head, a really great book that I would recommend to any recreationalist, regardless of what their mode of transportation is in the backcountry, whether you're a sledder, skier, climber, whatever. There's a really great book called Staying Alive in Avalanche Terrain. Yeah, I would recommend that one. That's a great starting point.
Excellent. And then, yeah, we'll do, got one last question here. Should people, what's the big worry about cornices? Like how dangerous can cornices be for us? I know myself that they can be, but somebody's asked us that question, so.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Cornices pose a hazard for a few different reasons. One, something as simple as standing on a cornice, your weight could cause a cornice to fail and you could go for a massive fall. So just simply, standing on a cornice poses a hazard itself. Another hazard with cornices that not everybody thinks about is cornices can fail naturally on their own, and predicting cornice failure is very, very challenging to do. It can happen really anytime throughout the year. And then when that chunk of snow falls, there's a tremendous amount of weight. In some cases, it's equivalent to a large explosive. And when that impacts the snow, that's a great way to trigger very large avalanches that as a skier or sledder, you otherwise wouldn't have been able to trigger. And so, yeah, it's quite a significant, and even if the cornice falling doesn't trigger an avalanche on the slope it lands on, just that massive chunk of snow rolling down the mountain can cause injury.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Tyson, for your knowledge and just the skills this evening, and just imparting us with all this about Avalanche Canada. Thank you so much again for your time. And Sanders' camera should come back on any moment here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on tonight and tell everybody what Avalanche Canada is about and the resources we offer to everybody.
Great.
Thanks, Tyson. Thanks, Natasha. Those are a couple of good questions there, actually. Transceivers, beacons, it comes up a lot. For those of us who've been around doing this for a bit, we can say that comes up a few times every winter, and so it still needs some clarification on what those PLBs do versus an avalanche transceiver. Thanks, Tyson. It was great to meet you last week in Revi and have you join us tonight. I appreciate your time and AvCans as well. Before we move on, I have two things I'd like to talk about because it came up in the chat. Natasha was texting me during Tyson's session. SFU has tossed in a great survey into the chat. Hopefully you can see it there. And it's all about avalanche risk management in the field. They're putting on, they're working in conjunction with Avalanche Canada for this, this survey, and they're trying to gain some insight into different user groups out there, no matter if you're a snowshoer, backcountry touring, split boarder, skinning up anywhere, sledders. They'd love to get some information from you. So this is a perfect spot for putting that in. I think, Natasha, you said Dorian put it in there. So if that's right, thank you. And if it's not, thanks to whoever did. Appreciate it. For those of you who stick around to the end, we have a little gift prize here at the end. We're going to do a quick draw. It will be a skill testing question that you hopefully can pick out the answers from our chats tonight. We have a door prize. It's a shell jacket from Arc'teryx. It's actually an extra large. It's what we've had in our warehouse, and we want to pass that on to someone who could wear it proudly. So stick around to the end and we'll ask some questions. And if you're quick in answering, we're going to pick a winner for that draw prize. Let's move on to our third special guest, who I can passionately say is a good friend of mine. If everyone can make sure their mic is muted, that would be helpful. Thanks. Dave is, he squeezes passion into everything in his life. It just oozes from Dave, that my experience with him anyway. Dave has 30 years of backcountry experience, 16 years of professional racing, totaling 450 plus events worldwide in over 12 different sports. Yikes. 11 years riding for Factory Ski-Doo, and 4 years. We were really fortunate to have Dave as our ambassador in the first 4 years of our program when we started in 2004. That's where I met Dave, was way back then. So it was great to help us kick off the program. Tonight, he will engage you, he will educate you, and I can guarantee you, entertain you. His overflowing passion for the outdoors and life will undoubtedly help you kick off this winter and infuse you with some super snow energy. So here we go. Let's bring Dave to the table and see what happens. Here you go. Thanks.
Hi, Sandra.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. Well, hi, everybody. Number one, I want to first thank Sandra and Natasha for putting this on. I think it's fantastic. Since I've known Sandra, she has been super passionate about also what I'm passionate about is reminding people to get out there and have fun, but to do it safely so you can keep doing it. And Natasha behind the scenes, thanks for setting all this up. And I also want to thank Cody. Cody's been a longtime friend, and he's an amazing sledder, and it's really good. And I'm proud to say that he's a part of the Ski-Doo team this year, although he's been a part of the Ski-Doo family for so long because he's been riding them. And I also want to say thank you to Tyson as well, that everybody at Avalanche Canada, they put their heart and soul into everything. And I think, what people will take away from today is that from Tyson's presentation, although it was short, really packed with information. And that's what you're going to get from Avalanche Canada, as well as BC AdventureSmart and their teams going around the province. There's so much cool stuff happening that just wasn't available, certainly when I started. And please, everybody out there, use and utilize all these great things that are there for all of us, me included. Having experience kind of just means you're old and you've made all the mistakes before, is the way I like to say it. And you never stop learning. If you stop learning, it actually it stops becoming fun. And I think that's why I love going into the backcountry. And it's been my job since I was 18 years old. So I am very lucky that I get to spend pretty much every day back there in the summer and in the winter. And I don't treat that lightly. There is a lot of things that go into getting back into the backcountry. So much so that I always forget, and I was writing notes as Cody was mentioning stuff and Tyson was mentioning stuff. And I'll give you a few pieces of examples. I do a lot of different sports. I love ski touring, I love sled skiing, I love sledding, I love snowshoeing. I cross-country ski still because I spent 15 years racing all over the world and doing that. I love all these sports, and they all have sort of risk management. And really, anybody who's about to get out into the backcountry, whether you're brand new or whether you're a seasoned veteran, it's all about management. And management can be easy if you pay attention and focus and learn, or it can be really difficult and take, people that go out there and don't sort of learn, then it becomes difficult. They get injured or they get hurt, and then they have to get over those and get back out there. And that's a whole mental thing as well. So I like to tell people that really, my job is management all the time, from my gear, my safety gear, to the training that I do, and every day when I'm out there. And I love what Cody said. Sometimes it's people think we only go out with people who are cool enough, or that we believe cool enough to hang out with. And that's totally untrue. I pick the people that I travel with based on their experience, how much fun they have, and also on their ego. This is something that we don't talk enough about, but all the sports that we do in the winter involve huge ego, and sledding is probably the biggest. So you can buy these high horsepower machines, and everything's expensive, and it's, there's lots of cool stuff. And unfortunately, people pay a lot of attention to that and less attention to some of the details that can really ruin your day or experience in those sports. And we all have an ego. That's kind of a good thing, but I generally try to think of myself as I've always got to be learning. And if I'm not, it's not fun. And I encourage everybody who's joining tonight is that search out all these very cool things that are right in front of you from tonight, and you'll see all the time listed on the AdventureSmart Instagram and Facebook and Avalanche Canada, and there's a ton of other things. But use them, and don't be, don't think and then discard it. Always listen, and you can discard things that you already know and that you practice, but always listen to what people have to say. And I've always held an open mind, and that's why I do so many different sports. People tend to segregate sports and think sledders are this way, and that's why they get caught in avalanches, and our backcountry skiers are this way. Really, at the end of the day, we're all humans on different pieces of gear, and that shouldn't define us. It really should open our eyes to, why are these experiences happening, and how can would that ever happen in the sport that I'm currently doing, or whatever. And that's a much more fun way to look at it, and it's less ego, and you'll learn faster and quicker that way. And that's what I've seen change in snowmobiling for sure. There's still lots of ego there, and I've gone on lots of rides where it's like, hey, who's the best, who's to the top of the hill fastest. But generally that's not where I have fun. It's more with people that are in a group and really want to learn together. And I'll give you a few examples. I've done a fair amount of guiding as well with my good friend Ray Mason, who was a longtime guide snowmobile. And we'd often take people out sledding or sled skiing. And one experience that I have that was, it really sums up the difference is, we'll talk to people before they come out, and they'll be so concerned about the avalanche danger because they read it and they watch the news. So of course the news loves to overindulge everything, and they'll say how the avalanche conditions are really bad, and they may be very bad. But there's always a place that you can travel to and do stuff. And when we take people out, this is often the first thing we have to do is kind of calm them down. Like, are we going to be going, we don't want to die. And you sort of say, that's not where we're going to take you. And there's places we can go, and sort of sets them at ease. And the difference from there, which could be at 8 in the morning to 10 in the morning, when I finally get them out to an area and double them up where they can ski. And I say, well, you can, ski down here. They go, well, can I go over there and hit that cliff and ski down that steep part? And I just have to remind them that, no, we might be able to work towards that, but we'll start on this gentle slope that may not be, your Instagram story for the day. But then you're going to get an idea of what snow conditions are like, and you'll be able to warm up, and so that if conditions stay favorable for us, we can slowly move over to the steeper and tougher terrain. And that story just, it sort of opened my eyes, because I think I always start out easy runs, but how the majority of people will go from this fear of like, I don't want to die in an avalanche, which is a great thing to have, but then get out there and it's like, that's all out the window once they see the magic, the magic run, the powder, the sun, whatever it is. And I call that the human effect, right? It's something that Avalanche Canada's talked about recently, and other things, is that we have this switch in our head that turns, that can take the worst thoughts into, hey, well, I'm out here now and I want to do it all. And it's really up to you and all of us to mitigate that. And that's something I've always been pretty good at doing. And so, I have a line, as Cody said, I have lots of people that I do know, dear friends that are no longer with us because they've lost their lives in the mountains. And I've always said that if any one of those people could be back, they would. And so I think it's really interesting when we talk about this is that I always say to myself, there's no line ever, you know, skiing or pow surfing or sledding or whatever it is, there's no line that's worth dying for. And I treat every slope that it will slide. Every place that I go, I treat it with huge respect. And it's not generally a fear that I have, it's more that makes me focused. And then I look for things that are going on. Like Cody mentioned, I look at the weather, I look at the avalanche bulletin, I talk to people, and then I'm out there always investigating. And I will say one of the advantages that I have over a lot of people that they don't have is that I'm out every day. And when you're out every day, you actually see what the weather and the forecast and those conditions look like, because you're just out there every day and you see them change, and you see the rise in temperature, you see it get cold, and you see the hoarfrost. And when you see it every day, it's easy to just kind of, you know, it's like if you go to work in the morning and it's raining, you grab your umbrella, you don't even have to think about it. The difficulty becomes when you're you know, you're working all week and you're not focused on what's the avalanche conditions are or the forecast, because you're just getting to work. And then Saturday rolls around and the clouds part and it gets sunny and you're off to the races, and we're all the same that way. It's like you're going, right? You've bought all this gear, you've taken a course, you've done all this stuff, you're going. And that's where things get a little bit difficult for the majority of people. And so one of those ways that people can they can mitigate that is, you know, spend a little bit of time each day looking at the weather, or, you know, you can look at the Whistler Blackcomb camera and see what's going on up there. And they'll, you know, sometimes, you know, ski resorts aren't as honest as they, you know, the temperature wise is it raining or is it snowing? But that gives you a big idea as well. And and check the avalanche bulletin, even though you're not going out that day, but what is it doing all week? And, you know, I think Cody said a great thing is keep a journal of it, just write it down, so that on Friday night you look through and you can do it with your group. It's like, hey, you guys, you know, on Tuesday the freezing level went up and this happened, and it gives you a better picture for being ready for when you're out there, because there's a big difference of sitting next to a computer and in the warm environment and then being out in the backcountry. So I'm really a proponent of gaining as much knowledge as you can, and treat it with like being fun. It's just as fun as getting a nice line on your skis or your snowmobile as, you know, capturing these moments where you can learn from them. And I think that's really, really important. And, you know, I can tell you all about myself as far as the things that I do, but I think Cody and Tyson have made a great thing. I will mention that I believe that everybody should be carrying as much gear as they feel comfortable with. And this means, like, I carry a Vhf radio, I carry a Zoleo satellite communicator, I carry a beacon probe and shovel on my person, of course, but I also in my tunnel bag carry a shovel and a probe. And I'm a big proponent of not replacing the gear that goes on your back, but actually Skidoo changed the industry with a lot of their tunnel bags having shovels on them now. And it doesn't replace the shovel that's in your backpack, you always have that. But the great thing about having a shovel on your tunnel bag as a sledder or a probe is you take it out a lot more. Okay, most people don't take their probe or shovel out very often. It can be hard to get to. They don't want to take their Avi pack off, so they just don't do it. And when you have it in your tunnel bag, you will take it out, and it's also faster to get out and quicker to deploy right out of your tunnel bag. And so why I carry it there is I'm always checking for snow depth. I'm always checking for layers in the snow with my probe. If I get stuck or someone else gets stuck, or I want to dig something quickly, I can pull my shovel right out of my tunnel bag and do it. And again, as Tyson said, it is my second set of gear. Always have my safety gear on my person in case I get separated from my snowmobile. But I guarantee that 10 times out of 10, you're faster grabbing your shovel off your tunnel bag than you are out of your backpack. And you don't have to do anything to do it. You just can have it out in a second. And I will, you know, two sledders, when they get stuck or their friends get stuck, the number one thing they do now is they use their hands or their feet to kick the snow out, and they don't do a very good job because we're not very efficient with our hands, which is why you carry a shovel in the first place. When you use that shovel, you'll pull it out more and you'll be more effective at helping someone get out who's stuck. And you'll also keep your gear drier, so your gloves. And again, it comes back to that management, right? The more wet things you touch, the wetter your gloves get. The colder you get, the more in a rush you get through zones. When you're warm, you can look around more. You're, you know, a little bit more relaxed. And I wrote down a few things here. And one of the key things I'd like to say to people is also be relaxed out there, right? So that doesn't mean like don't pay attention. It means don't be in a rush, okay? We all know that things happen bad in our lives when we try to rush, where it's driving your car or whether it's being in the backcountry. And unfortunately, what happens is we get to these parking lots and we want to get up touring and we want to get to the zone fast so we can ski, or we get to the, we want to sled up to the mountain fast. And when we do that, we rush and we forget to do things. So if anything that you can be in your group is be chill and listen to people, and then see where we're going and slow them down if you feel they're rushing, and say something. Also, even if you're in a group with me and you think I know the most and you don't say anything, it's totally wrong. I have not made you feel comfortable, because everybody should be able to talk up and say something, and that's how we all learn. And I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form. So someone can open something to my eyes that I wasn't aware of, because I was either not relaxed or I was just overseeing something because we were slow at one point. And now I want to make up that time. So this happens nonstop in the backcountry. Again, that management and then being relaxed or chill to figure out those things that we need to do. And I hope, you know, my passion in life has been, since I've been 18 and started racing and being in the backcountry, is to remind people to get out there as much as possible and have tons of fun, but just gain the knowledge and use all these people that are out there creating all these amazing things to better yourself so that you can have more fun. I mean, that really is, if you're out there and you feel confident in what you're doing and you have all the gear, it becomes more fun, and that's really what I want to see from everyone. So I'd love to open it up, Natasha, to some questions, because that's where I learn the most, and I feel that rather than me talking to people, I'd rather listen to some questions and answer them as best I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Dave. Yeah, we have a great question. Out of all the sports you've done, what's your favorite?
Very hard question. I love them all, which is why I do them all. You know, I started off in a few different sports, and they, you know, once you're a good runner, being good on a bike works, and then cross country skiing instead of downhill skiing to keep your fitness. That's how kind of I led my path of life led. And every one of them has given me experience for everyone else, right? I mean, it's funny, when I became a sledder, people think you can't tour or ski, cross-country ski, because those people hate each other. And I just kind of laughed, and I was like, you know, one of my favorite things is to ride my snowmobile into the backcountry and ski tour it off with some friends all day. And we have zones that we go, and there's nobody getting there. And that's the beauty of machines. And I love shutting it down, and it's quiet and whatever. And I also love where Ski-Doo snowmobile can take me and the powder that I get. So every sport has a purpose in my life. And, you know, people, you know, my life, I've been very lucky to have all support through my whole career, and still to this day. And it just seems to get busier and busier. But the number one thing that has always stayed true to me, and why I can talk about all these things and why I'm always having fun, is it's in my heart. I only ever do something that I absolutely love. Like I've never had to, you know, do something that I didn't like just because. If I don't do it, it's because I don't really enjoy it. So, you know, when I stopped racing, I stopped running, and not because I don't love running. I love running, but unless you run every day, running isn't that fun. And you're fit, it's not that fun. It's not, I can't just go, oh, I'm going to go for a run for a day. But biking, I can, you know, I mean, I bike every day, but I could go not biking for a week, and then I start again, and it's like, oh yeah, I love this. It's just easier on your body and easier to think. So hopefully that answered that question in a roundabout way.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, we've got another great question here from Sterling. And Sterling is asking, what gear emergency-wise does your tunnel bag consist of?
Oh, great question. Well, and if anybody wants to, for sure follow Cody and I've said Avalanche Canada and AdventureSmart. But if you want to find out, I just released 36 videos on all this stuff, what I carry in my backpack, what I carry in my tunnel bag, what I carry, and they're all on my YouTube channel, which is Dave Norona on YouTube. And they're all there available now, from satellite communication and why I've used them all and why I choose the one that I use. And it'll give you a really good perspective. Some people think it's like, I'm just saying it because I'm sponsored by them, but I can be sponsored by any company, and I've never blanket sponsored anybody. So I choose the companies that I want to represent, and I always have, based on if I like it and use it. And that's bottom line. So that's why I can talk so easily about the product, is because I've done the homework. In a lot of instances, I've tested the product before it's been available. And that's what you'll get from me. Again, just what's on my heart and why I use it. And I'm also very even though my gear can be free, I don't like actually using the most expensive gear all the time unless it really does matter, because I'm cost effective. I don't waste money, and whether I'm getting it or not for free, or I'm working with a company, I choose the company that works really well. And I will say, Inreach is an amazing product. I use that for 10 years. There's also another product now, Zoleo. And so your people know tonight's the last night that they can get it for $200. So the satellite communication can be very expensive, and Zoleo is their sale ends tonight. So definitely do some homework on that if you're looking for one of those emergency satellite communicators. Everybody in the backcountry should have one of those, or there should be 2 or 3 in your group that goes out for sure. And so yeah, you can find out all about there of what I carry in my tunnel bag, and all that stuff is listed, because the list goes on, and everybody's different, right? I usually go really light and then have something very bomber. Okay, so if something crap hits the fan, I'm not gonna die. And that's where I go. And then I usually go quite light because I want to move fast and efficient, and that's how I do things. Some people like things in the middle, so they're a little more comfortable. I kind of one end of the scale and the other. I like to go fast and light, but I have the bomber in case something goes really wrong.
Wicked. We got another great question from Carol. How often do you check your safety equipment and supplies?
Awesome question. All the time, because I'm using it every day. Nothing sits in my pack. Really, nothing sits in my tunnel bag or backpack at the very bottom for a season. At the end, except maybe a chocolate bar that I go, holy crap, a Mars bar, how did I miss this? But I'm always using it, and I'm always testing it. So I'm a big proponent of the airbags that I use now are capacitor airbags, so you can test them, you can set them off. You can actually set them off in the backcountry in 25 minutes, they'll be reloaded. So there's so much cool gear and technology wise that, and then you're just using it more. So you test it more, and then you get used to it. For all those people who are really if you're into looking at getting an airbag, you want to do your homework on not just is it comfortable and it sets me off, is what's it like to reload it, and what do I need to reload it? Can I reload it at, do I have to, usually if you get involved in an avalanche where you set off your airbag, it's probably time to go back to the parking lot and reassess where you are today. But if you had to go tomorrow, would you be able to reset the airbag that you did, or do you have to go back to a store, and all those things? I've talked about all those things throughout my career, and not everybody looks at that part of the puzzle, and it really can change what you buy. Again, there's a cost to everything, and there's an overall cost, and that's why what I try to do is like give people that bigger picture to what that will be, and so that your value goes further when you know all that.
Thank you so much, Dave. Questions are popping in here. This is great.
Well, we can answer another one if you want. And people can also, as with Cody, hit us on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube. Ask a question. Like, man, we're really approachable, and don't like, hey, there's no dumb questions. I love getting questions because it reminds you, like, I remember when I didn't know that, or I had to ask that, or oh, that, you know, I never even thought about that. So questions are awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to get this person's name wrong. Teoa is asking, do you refill your airbag every year?
Well, my airbag currently is a capacitor, so it's not a battery. It's a capacitor that's kind of like a battery that holds a charge, so it has to be charged. Not every night; it can go a week without being charged. But I check it. I check my radio and my airbag get charged every evening when I come home. And then my satellite communication is, you know, probably goes 3 or 4 days because the battery, it doesn't really, you know, it's a 200-hour battery. But all the stuff that needs to be charged, even though it will last several days, usually gets charged every night. So yes, you should set off your airbag. If it's a canister airbag or a battery, you should set your airbag off before the season, like right now, and then also make sure you have the ability to be able to get into a shop to get it, the bottle filled if you don't do it yourself, or if you have a spare bottle. And that way, you want to do it right now because it's fresh. A lot of people do it at the end of the season and then they repack it, and then it's like, oh, it's good for next season, but you've gone through the whole summer. Remember, an airbag is only as good as you use it. If you ski once a year, probably not that good on skis. So if you use your airbag once a year, probably not that good at deploying it. So that's what I like about the capacitor. We blow it off all the time because it's kind of fun to do, especially after shots in the bar. And then I can reload it and it's ready to go for the morning. So for me, that's kind of why I use that packet. It's easy to do, and the more times I use it, the more normal it is, and it's not really a big deal to do it. No airbag's a big deal to set off and reset. So use it and try it as much as you can. You'll just be better at doing it.
Excellent. We have a great question from Mike. When you are heading out, what are a few of the key indicators that you are looking for as you are assessing the conditions?
Yeah, great. So this would be after that I've, you know, seen the weather, been out there, looked at the forecast. You're just always looking for little hints, and if there's little sloughs off trees, and it's just on the side of the bank, that's your sign, right? What that slope is doing higher up or over in a bigger form. So you get a lot of hints from small stuff that is non-consequential that relates to the bigger stuff that would be, you know, have high consequences. So paying attention to everything. And you know, I like to be, I took my Avalanche skills course with Nico Weiss, who I think is one of the best Avalanche teachers in the world. And he is so passionate that he knows more about transceivers than most of the companies who build their transceivers. He can tell you everything wrong about each transceiver and everything. So he's just an amazing guy. And he does both backcountry and sledding, even though he's not a big sledder. He's just his style relates to sledders very well. And he's a big, you know, he taught me to just be, you know, really aware and looking for all these things. And also I like to be in that terrain. I'm not trying to chase down avalanches, but I try to kick off stuff when I'm skiing. I'd rather be out there going on small stuff, seeing what's happening, than sort of tiptoeing around and going, oh, nothing happened that day. You know, lots of times when we're skiing, we get a lot of slough for sure. And people kind of freak out, and I'm going, well, we know what it's doing now. We know where it's happening, if it's on a convex roll or all these things. And so I like actually reactions. I don't want to see massive cornice drops and whatever when I'm skiing or riding by any stretch of the imagination, but I liked visually seeing things. Like I don't like going out there and like, oh, nothing happened today, because that makes you kind of complacent. I like to see things, stopping if you see an avalanche like cut out somewhere, I always take a picture. I've learned that from Ray Mason, like, who I was taught, you know, guiding and tail guiding. He takes lots of pictures, put it in the Min report for Avalanche Canada. Like, it's all about sharing that, right? Lots of times people get like, oh, I don't know very much about it. It's like, good. If you don't know very much, you're going to write about it, and it's going to resonate with someone else who doesn't know very much, and everybody's going to learn a little bit more, okay? The thing I hate in life is people who speak from authority. I've had this from guides, like, talk down to you if you're not very good. it is the worst asset anybody can have, because people don't learn from those people, right? No one learns when someone's talking down to you. They learn when you're talking with them, and be that person. And I try to be, when I'm out, I see a lot of silly stuff, and I try to approach people and say, you know, don't call them a jerk. Just say, hey, just so you know, this is why, you know, this is what we're doing, and hey, what do you think of this? And, you know, and be, you know, be calm and collected and talk to people, because we all make mistakes all the time. And it's we want to avoid that talking from authority, because it just makes you fight, and then you go off your different ways and you don't really learn anything. So I've had it happen to me lots of times. There's lots of people, you know, even Avalanche Canada, right? They've got the super nerds, and I call them people nerds. I'm a nerd. We're all nerds in the sports we love. But Avalanche Canada recognized this early on. They've got incredibly, you know, everybody that works there is talented, and is a part of that is talented. But they have people who are so talented that they can't talk to someone like me, because my level is so below theirs. It just goes right over my head. And what they've learned is that they relay that to people who can then pass that on to someone like me, who's speaking at a lower level than a snow scientist. And I still love seeing a snow scientist and recognize their work. And it doesn't matter what it is, right? Whether they're designing, you know, oil for our snow machines, they're nerds too. And he's like, I don't care what this guy's talking about. I just want to make sure that it works. So this is a big part of the picture now. And AdventureSmart has been actually that catalyst to take some true professionals and bring them down to, or bring them with people to different levels, so that they can match the brand new recreationalists getting into ski touring or sledding to the next level, and we all can find our way in there. You know, Cody he's an exceptional snowmobiler that goes upside down and does all these things, and a way better rider than in that respect than me. But I can speak to a different audience, and that's why we have both on our team, because I bring new people into the sport, bring them up to a level where then they start to look at someone like Rob Alford and Carl Kuster and Cody Mcnulty's of the world, and then go, that's where I want to go. And they have people to graduate themselves. No one gets from the bottom to the top instantly, and if you do, you're gonna pay somewhere along the line.
Awesome, Dave. Thank you so much for that informative chat and all the questions. We have a little giveaway here, our Arc'teryx. So Sandra's going to come on and ask a little skill testing question from earlier in the presentation. So the people that have stuck around, once Sandra asks the question, the first person to put it in the questions that to me will win the XL Arc'teryx shell.
Right on. Always a pleasure, Dave. I'll come back and thank you again, but that was awesome. It was great. Okay, so let's go for drum roll. Let's see who's going to win this XL Arc'teryx jacket drop prize. So early in the presentation, Cody mentioned something. He talked about percentages of the time he spends doing those upside down, sideways, backs, forwards. Can you tell me what the percentage range was? He said one number to another percentage number. That's the winning ticket for that Arc'teryx jacket. So we'll see who has got fast fingers, great memory, can type that to Natasha, and the jacket's yours. So
awesome. So the fastest fingers this evening are Marshall Hegland. So Marshall, I'm going to just send you an email address here as a reply, and we will get a shipping address for you. Yeah, so Sandra, if you wanted to chat with Dave there at the end, and then we will sign off once you've finished the end. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Dave, it was a pleasure. It's always, you know, when you brought up Nico's name, I'm like, oh yeah, man, you know, and it goes way back to early when I first met you. Do you remember us, me, you, and Kim, and a bunch of our team? We were Mount Washington. Nico was our instructor, and it was the first time I'd ever met Nico, and I'm just like, holy knowledge, like this is just like insane, and you're just captivated, right? So,
and he hasn't changed one bit. He's still doing courses all over. And he does a couple up at Black Tusk Snowmobile area, which is right outside of Squamish, and I always go up and see him there. And he's just a magic bullet, right, in our sport. He gets it. He knows how to talk to people. Again, he knows how to talk to and with people, not like down and say, hey, stupid, why didn't you know this? Because nobody wants to feel silly or dumb, and it's where we don't learn. We just give up, right? We all that, and you know, I have a young one, and you just see that if you talk down to them, they leave, right? And they don't want to be a part of that. And you have to really bring fun to their level. You have to relearn how to be, you know, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, and that's what having kids is so amazing. And we're all just kids. We all just want to learn, and that's why, seriously, Sandra, what you've done in the program and where you've taken it to, and the people who are going around the province, it's you know, it's been a long time since I was the ambassador of the AdventureSmart team, which is incredible. And when it started, I remember every day and every little thing we did. But those really make a big difference to so many people. And you know, when our province is growing, there's more people are going out. So yes, the numbers are going up. I think people are way more aware, and man, like, we need to do better. We need to really help the people that are helping us. So that we, you know, if we just take a lot of this responsibility on ourselves, we can mitigate a lot of the silly stuff that happens. And I hate when people call out people who get rescued, because anybody can get rescued. And it's really about you know, sharing experiences to remind us, right, that we're all vulnerable. And the great thing that Search and Rescue does in the province is they come and rescue us, and they don't really ask anything for it. So to all those people out there, you know, I've done it for years, as far as slideshows, donations, figure out how to get some funding, auctions, join in on the fun, and you see the dollars that you donate where they get spent, and it really makes a difference for sure.
It does, and that support's huge. And any, just to conclude on a few things, if anyone is ever in need of help anywhere in the province of BC, Search and Rescue is free of charge. So please don't hesitate to make that call. Remember the number. It's the same as what you were taught when you were a little one. If something's happening in the house, who do you call? Not Ghostbusters, but it would be 911, and that's the number, and it's free of charge. And call as soon as possible, and just stick where you are and wait for help. So before we finish off, this week we've got December 2nd, we've got Backcountry Touring. We've got the same setup here. We're just gonna have some great special guests for touring, split board, skinning, whatever your gig is. Join us then. December 7th, we've got a great seminar lineup for snowshoers. And then we're coming back for some more sledders, because we know there's a lot of you out there, and we want to make sure we can support that. We've got some awesome people for that one too. And if you attended tonight and December 9th, you get a double entry to win an AST course. So we've got an AST course to give away for the other 2 double entries if you attend this one and December 9th. Different people, different conversations, all about safety and all about fun. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Cody. Thanks, Tyson. It's been a pleasure to hang out with everyone. Thanks for sticking around, and have a safe winter. Thanks for thinking about Search and Rescue, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.